Hello everyone and welcome back to Beatles channel. Lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining me for this video and I hope you're all doing well. Now today's video is episode 2 of my Beatles Bootleg Series, where we're going to be taking a deep dive into, two Beatles Bootleg box sets, namely the Beatles Mythology Volume 2, which is a 4 CD box set and covers the period 1964 to 1966. And in later episodes, we'll be looking at Beatles Mythology 3, which again is a 4 CD box set, and it covers the period 1966 to 1969. And I will be talking about a few other bootlegs after we've done those 2 box sets in this series. I'm not a huge bootleg guy, but the ones that I do have are really good and they're worth taking a deep dive into. So by a deep dive, I mean I'm going to talk about every track that is on each of the CDs and try and describe it as best as I can to you, so you get an idea what is on these CDs. Now these 2 box sets, and there was a volume 1 as well, which covers 62 to 64, which I don't have. That is a 3 CD set. I don't have that one, but these came out in 1999, and at that time I think they cost roughly about 50 quid each. Now they're very hard to get now. There's none on Discogs. Well, Discogs can't show them anyway, but on eBay, when I did episode 1, there was one on there and they wanted like 300 odd quid for this one for 2, and I couldn't find one for 3. So as I say, they're 4 CDs, and every CD in both of these box sets is in running time is over 70 minutes, so they are packed full of Beatley goodness. They kind of, they look like that, and the CDs are just stacked on top of each other. We're going to be looking at CD 2 in today's episode, which is this one here. That is the track listing. I know you got some glare there, you can't really see it, but it doesn't really matter because I am gonna, I'm gonna tell you everything that is on here and tell you about it. Now, if you missed episode 1 of this series, there will be an end card at the end of this video that you can just click on and go back and watch it. But there's not really any real reason to watch the episodes in order unless you're a bit of a stickler for chronological order, because each CD follows in chronological order. So that would be a reason. If you are a stickler for chronological order, then you can just whiz to the end of this video, click on the end card, watch episode 1, and then come back and watch episode 2. Okay, so there is a booklet inside it. It's not much of a booklet. I'll just show you the pages on it. You literally get one line about each track on the CD and a few nice pictures. That is it. There are 20 tracks on CD 2, and the total running time for this is 72 minutes and 42 seconds. Right, shall we get on and talk about CD 2 of Mythology 2? Now, one of the claims of these Mythology box sets is that none of the material on these box sets has officially been released. And when they came out in 1999, that was pretty much the case. It's not the case now, because now we've had Beatles box sets that have had outtakes in them, and we've had the second live at the BBC album since then as well. But in the main, most of the songs on here, on the items on here, have not been officially released. But track 1 on CD 2 of Mythology 2 is take 1 of That Means a Lot, and that was recorded on the 20th of February 1965. It was a song that was written to be included in the film Help, and obviously on the Help album, but they couldn't really get it right. You can hear in the song that Paul is struggling with some of the notes. But take one is also included on Anthology 2. But when I listen to this, the version on Mythology seems to be a lot cleaner. The vocals seem cleaner. It's a slightly longer version. I obviously edited it for Anthology 2, but this version here has got a little bit of studio chat at the beginning and accounting as well. So it's about 10 seconds longer than the version on Anthology 2. But the main thing is that it sounds much cleaner. And that sort of suggests that there was some sort of jiggery pokery going on with the remixing of it, or the mixing of it for Anthology 2, which doesn't surprise me because there was a lot of jiggery pokery for Anthology 2, where they took bits from one take and bits from another take and put them together as one sort of track on Anthology. We know that they did that, and there are parts of the song from Anthology 2 that sound a little bit distorted, and not the case here on Mythology. It's a much cleaner version now. They couldn't get the song to work at all. Eventually it was given to PJ Proby and he had a minor hit with it. The song has kind of got shades of Ticket to Ride. If you listen to the drum riff that Ringo is playing, it's similar. It's not the same, but it's similar to what he plays in Ticket to Ride as well. So that is track one. It lasts for 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Now, one of the things that puts me off bootlegs is when you get several versions of the same song all going wrong one after the other. I've got one bootleg that's got like something like 15 versions of Obladi Oblada going wrong, and you just don't need that. And if you're not a fan of the song That Means a Lot, then you're going to be a little bit disappointed with the first section of CD 2, because we have tracks 2 to 6 are all other versions of That Means a Lot going wrong. The first one is just labelled a rehearsal. It's only 40 seconds long, and it's just the Beatles messing about with the song. Track 3, this is a remake of Take 20, and it's all going quite well, but it breaks down after about a minute when they get to the middle 8. And what's interesting about these further versions of That Means a Lot is on take 1 we had John singing harmony in the middle 8 with Paul, and that kind of covered up some of Paul's frailty in his voice. Now on these later takes, for some reason John isn't on there, so I don't know what they decided there, but maybe they were going to add the harmonies later, but the further versions of the song lack John's harmony on the middle 8, and the song is lacking because of that. Track 4 is take 21 of That Means a Lot, and they've speeded it up a little bit, and you can hear that George is starting to add some quite nice guitar licks, particularly on the intro and sort of at the end of the verses and stuff like that. But that again, it breaks down after about 2 minutes. Track 5 is a combination of takes 22 to 24, and again that lasts about it's about 2 minutes 10, and it breaks down halfway through. But again, we haven't got John giving the vocal support to Paul, and you can really hear that he can't really reach those notes, those high notes during that middle 8. And track 6 is called That Means a Lot, Just a Test, and this is just basically it's how long does it last? It lasts about 53 seconds, and it's just basically the Beatles just pissing about in the studio with the song. They Paul's singing it in an exaggerated voice. They're slowing down, they're speeding up, they're slowing down again. So that's pretty much. So really, the fact that we get take 1 on Anthology, even though it's a little bit distorted. You know, they gave us the best take that seems to be available, but probably the version of take 1 on Mythology is probably better than the one that's on Anthology. But so that's the first 6 tracks are all various versions of That Means a Lot. So track 7 on the CD is a stereo remix of Yes It Is, the B-side of Ticket to Ride. And this remix was done by Norman Smith on the 23rd of February 1965. And as far as I can hear, this remix sounds exactly the same as the version of Yes It Is that appears on Past Masters Volume 1 in 1988. So I'm not really sure what the value of its inclusion on this CD is really, because it had already been out on Past Masters. Now tracks 8 to 14 is a live performance, and this is taken from the New Musical Express, the NME Poll Winners concert from 1965, which took place at the Empire Hall, Wembley in London on the 11th of April 1965. So the tracks are, there's an introduction, which is just here they are, the Beatles, and then you've got I Feel Fine, She's a Woman, Babies in Black, although it's listed on the CD as being Babies in Blackpool, because that is what Paul comically announces the song as being, Babies in Blackpool. Then you get Ticket to Ride and Long Tall Sally, and then there's an outro. Now, there were 10,000 people at this Poll Winners concert, and so there is screaming. There is screaming, but it's not. It's there, but it's not that intrusive like it is on, say, Live at the Hollywood Bowl. It's there, but it's fairly low in the mix. Now, on I Feel Fine, the drums are virtually inaudible. You can't really hear them, but that changes on the next song to the end, although they're still not really loud enough. The vocals are very, very clear. The guitars are audible, but probably not loud enough. It's not a brilliant recording, but it's the sort of recording that you would expect from a bootleg taken in 1965, I think. And if I was sort of marking the sound quality out of 10, I'd probably say it was around a 6.5 maybe, but nothing wrong with the performance at all. So track 15 on the CD is Take 4 of Help, recorded on the 13th of April 1965 at Abbey Road Studios. Now this track is about 3.5 minutes long, so it's elongated from the actual song because there's quite a bit of studio chat at the beginning, and you can hear the engineer shouting out Take 4 about 3 or 4 times, but the Beatles are having a right old chinwag and they're not taking any notice, particularly George and Paul, who are discussing the vocals that are going to go on this song, and whether they're going to single track it or double track it, or whether they've got enough tracks on the desk to do all the harmonies that they're going to do. You kind of have to turn the volume up to hear what they're saying, and when you turn the volume up, then you hear the engineer shout Take 4, and it's going on like that. But basically Take 4 is an instrumental run through of the song. It's exactly the same length as the finished version, so it's got the same number of verses and choruses, and it ends in the same way. It's got John is on acoustic guitar, Ringo on drums, George on electric guitar, and Paul on bass guitar. Now, certain parts of the song aren't there, particularly George's electric guitar part. So, for example, help me if you can, I'm feeling down. That isn't there yet. And when it gets to the bit where all the instrumentation stops on the won't you please help me, you can hear John counting out that bar of space on his acoustic guitar by muting the strings and like that. But this is an interesting listen. I hadn't heard this version before. I'd heard it on this box set, and I think as far as the music goes on this particular CD of the box set. This is probably the jewel in the crown, and I would think this is almost certainly exactly the sort of thing that would be on a Help Super Deluxe edition as an outtake. So as with the first CD in this box set, CD2 has also got some non-musical content as well, and track 16 is one of those. It's called Peter Sellers Presenting, and it kind of does what it says on the tin. It is exactly that. It's Peter Sellers presenting the Beatles with a Grammy Award for Hard Day's Night. It takes place at the Twickenham Film Studios, where they're filming for the Help movie, and Peter Sellers, he's trying to be amusing. He says, "I'm here with the Beatle rather than the Beatles." He says it 2 or 3 times until someone actually gets the joke. He refers to the Grammy as being the Grandma Award, and Paul accepts it, says, "Thank you very much, Peter." Then they kind of, Peter Sellers is trying to teach them how to speak like Inspector Clouseau in pidgin French, and they end up singing the first line of "It's a Long Way to Tipperary" in pidgin French. That is pretty much it. The whole item lasts about 1 minute 30 seconds. So track 17 is part musical and part interview. It starts off with a version of Dizzy Miss Lizzy, which was unfamiliar to me. I don't think I've heard it before. It may be taken from one of the BBC sessions, but it's not one that I recognise. And you get virtually the whole song, and as the song sort of begins to go into the final stage, the interview sort of fades in. Now the interview, which is called the British Service Information Interview, and what this is basically this is a thing that used to get sent out to foreign countries to promote British culture, and the interview takes place at the Savile Theatre in Shaftesbury Avenue in London on 30th of July 1965, and the interview part is only about a minute long. The whole piece is about 3 minutes 18, including the Dizzy Miss Lizzy song. So the interviewer is a guy called Dibbs Mather, and he asked them a couple of stock questions. What would you be doing if you weren't Beatles? And they kind of give the stock answer that they always did. But then he asks, what would you be doing musically? And George pipes up, "Oh, we'd probably be playing, if we weren't famous as Beatles, we'd probably be playing modern jazz." And the interviewer sort of says, "Really?" And he says, "Well, maybe not modern jazz, but, that kind of thing, because, we don't, at the moment, we don't get the chance to improve as musicians or develop as musicians." So this is as early as July 1965 that George is already complaining that, they're not improving as a band. And the interview says why. He says, "Well, because we play the same songs all the time on tour, so we never get any better. And it's not like Hamburg, where we could improvise songs when we were bored with them, because the audiences now expect the songs that we play live to be replicas of what they know on the record." The interviewer says, "Are you bored of being Beatles already?" And John says, "No, we're not, because there's always something else happening. If we get bored of something, there's always something new around the corner. If we're bored on tour, well, by the time we're bored on tour, the tours are over, and then there's like MBEs, or there's making films, or there's making records, or doing TV." So he says we're always doing something different, so we never get the chance to get bored. So he kind of steps in. But I thought it was interesting that George was already mid 1965, he's already fed up and of playing live, and feeling that he's not, he needs something new to develop as a musician, probably more than the other 3. So track 18 is another interview piece, and this lasts 25 minutes, and it's an extract from a 45-minute show that went out on the BBC on the 30th of August 1965, and it had never been heard since. So when it arrived on this box set, this was the first time that anyone would have heard it since the actual broadcast in August 1965. Now the whole show was about 45 minutes long, but it's condensed to 25 minutes here because they played several songs during the interview, but just the standard album versions of songs. So those have been cut out for this presentation. Now it kind of starts off in New York, and Brian Matthews is actually sitting next to a 14-year-old boy in the audience at a Beatles show, and he's asking him, what he thinks of the Beatles, and he's saying they're just the most amazing band. No other band would ever get a reception like this, and he says his favourite Beatle is John Lennon because he's so intelligent, and all this is coming from a 14-year-old boy. And then it cuts to an interview with John, who is talking about the show that they've just done at Shea Stadium, and saying how fantastic it was, the biggest crowd that they've ever played in front of. And he talks about that little the I'm Down section of the set, where he's going crazy on the keyboards and George is killing himself laughing and all that. He's talking about that, and it's interesting to hear him talking about that when it's so fresh in his mind. It's only happened like a couple of days ago. Then it kind of moves on. They move on to Toronto in Canada, and they're talking about going through security and how the Beatles are, they're obviously separated from other people that are on the flight when they go through security, and they're being put in a room, and it feels like that they're going to be searched and they're in trouble, but the security guards are just basically getting out their autograph books and asking them to sign autographs and stuff like that. It moves on at a fairly sort of slow pace. The fact that the songs are interspersed, between it, and we kind of hear just the beginning and the ending of each song in this clip. So that takes up quite a bit of time. There's probably about 5 or 6 of those little clips, but they've cut out like the main song. They also talk about writing a musical, John and Paul. Paul mainly is talking about writing a musical, and the same old question about, have you put a time limit on how long the Beatles are going to last? And, Paul's answer is, we haven't put a time limit on it, but when we stop selling records and stop selling concert tickets, then we will finish. There's a short interview with Ringo, where he gets asked about his favourite other drummers. And he names Buddy Rich, and he says, I'll never be able to play like him, but his style of music doesn't suit our style of music, so it doesn't really matter, which is true. There's also a section in it which is not very interesting at all, where they're interviewing Sounds Incorporated, who were one of the support acts on this tour. So that bit is not really relevant to us as Beatles fans. And at the end, there's a little snippet talking to George about his guitars that he's using on the tour, and he's saying, that he can hear when he's playing he's out of tune, but it's so noisy that he can't even attempt to put it back in tune, because he can't hear the strings to be able to put it back in tune, and the chances are that he'll put it even more out of tune, so he just doesn't bother. And he quips that they're thinking of getting Keith Richards to come on tour to tune their guitars, because whenever the Stones play live, he always seems to be in tune. And that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. As I say, it's a 25-minute section with not too much consequence. I think what I've talked about here is probably the highlights. So the final 2 tracks on this CD, tracks 19 and 20, are pop profile interviews with John Lennon and George Harrison. These were recorded in May 1965 at the NEMS offices in Argyle Street in London. The interviewer is Brian Matthews, and these interviews were never actually broadcast in the UK. They were recorded for transmission on radio stations overseas. Now, if these tracks sound familiar to you, that's because they are. because these two interviews also appear on the Live at the BBC Volume 2, the on-air double CD album. Now, the versions on here are actually edited versions of those that are on the BBC. Obviously, when this box set came out, we didn't have Live on Air Volume 2, so they were new then. But on here, the John Lennon interview lasts for 5.5 minutes. On the Live at the BBC, it lasts for 8.5 minutes. And on here, the George Harrison interview lasts for 4 minutes. And on live at the BBC, it lasts for 8 minutes. So I'm not gonna discuss these two interviews. You can go and listen to them for yourself. You've probably already heard them. You probably already own them. So I'm not going to talk about them here, but that concludes the content for CD2. So my overall thoughts of CD2 of this box set is that it's lacking a little bit in interesting musical content. We got all of those outtakes of That Means a Lot, but probably the highlight was the NME Poll Winners concert from the Empire Pool, Wembley. Getting that in its entirety, definitely a big plus point for this CD, as was take 4 of Help, which was really interesting to listen to. Now, as far as musical content goes, when we get to episode 3, which will be dropping in a couple of weeks, where we'll be discussing CD 3 of Mythology 2, CD 3 contains a lot of outtakes from the Rubber Soul sessions, which is particularly interesting to us, because obviously some of these outtakes that are appearing on here could well be the sort of thing that gets included in the long-awaited Rubber Soul box set when that eventually drops. So that'll be interesting to discuss with you what is on CD 3 in this box set from the Rubber Soul sessions. So please stay tuned to the channel. As I say, that episode will be dropping in a couple of weeks. Now, if you're wondering why this video was set up as a premiere, which basically means that I can schedule the release of the video, it's because I'm on holiday. So you see, I'm thinking about you all the time. You do mean so much to me, and you know, I thought I'd leave a video for you to watch while I'm on holiday. Now, I know what's going to happen. I know exactly what's going to happen. While I'm away, there is going to be the announcement of the red and the blue. I'm sure it's going to happen. I can feel it. I can feel that is going to happen. It will be absolutely typical that this announcement that we've been waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks is going to drop at a time when I'm not able to make a video. But maybe I will find a way to make a video if that announcement does happen next week, and it will be so typical if it does. So I am away, but if you do want to make any comments down in the comments about this CD or about this box set or whatever you like, I will, you know, I always read your comments and I always respond to your comments, and you will get a response. It might not just be quite as immediate as it usually is, but I will get round to you. You will get a response if you leave me a comment, as I always do. Now, I also wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who is subscribing at the moment. Thanks very much for subscribing to the channel, and I hope you're enjoying the content here. If you're not subscribed yet, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Love to have you on board. One other little bit of housekeeping. Please give this video a like, hit that thumbs up icon, because it does really help the channel. It helps my videos get out there, so you'd be doing me a big favour. Go on, just hit it. Go on, just hit it now. I'll wait. I don't mind. Go on, you can do it. Go on. Thank you. I'm going to stop wittering now, but I would really appreciate it if you give the video a like. It does really help the channel. Okay, well, that is it from me. Also, when I get back from holiday, we're going to do the next live stream, so watch out for that. I will do a community tab to let you know when that is happening, and that will be happening a week after next when I get back from holiday. Okay, that is it from me. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you all very soon. Bye bye.